If you've ever been the scapegoat in a narcissistic family, you'll understand this instantly. My brother committed fraud. I took the blame. My parents disowned me to protect the family name. This is family betrayal, revenge, and justice, and the cost of choosing the wrong child. My name is Emma Ramos, and for 26 years, I lived in the shadow of a monument built to worship my older brother, Liam. If you have ever been the scapegoat in a narcissistic family dynamic, you know exactly what the air felt like in my house. It was heavy. It was suffocating. It was conditional. My existence was tolerated as long as I was useful, while Liam's existence was celebrated simply because he was born. Our family business, Ramos Consulting, was a boutique firm handling high-net-worth portfolios and corporate strategy. My father started it, and the plan was always for Liam to take over. The problem was that Liam had the charisma of a game show host, but the work ethic of a sloth. He was great at shaking hands, drinking scotch at the country club, and looking good in a tailored suit. But when it came to the actual grind, the analytics, the market research, the late-night crisis management, that was all me. I was the engine room. Liam was the hood ornament. I joined the firm right out of college with a dual degree in finance and business law. I worked 80-hour weeks. I fixed Liam's mistakes quietly. When he overslept and missed a meeting with the tech giant AlphaStream, I was the one who drafted the apology and the incentive package to keep them on board. When he misquoted a projection by $3 million because he didn't check the spreadsheets, I was the one who stayed up for 3 days straight redoing the entire fiscal plan so we wouldn't get sued. My parents never saw this, or rather, they chose not to see it. To them, Liam was the CEO in waiting, and I was his assistant, regardless of my actual title. The end of my life as I knew it began on a Tuesday in November. We were managing the accounts for the Sterling Group, our most prestigious client. They were a massive conglomerate, and retaining them was the only reason Ramos Consulting was still considered a Tier 1 firm. Liam had been personally handling the Sterling account for 6 months. I had offered to help, but he insisted he wanted the glory. That Tuesday, I was summoned to the conference room. My mother and father were sitting at the long mahogany table, looking like executioners. Liam was standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline, his back to me. That was his tell. He couldn't look me in the eye when he was about to twist the knife. My father threw a thick file onto the table. It slid across the polished wood and stopped right in front of me. He said, "Emma, would you like to explain why $500,000 of the Sterling Group's funds were routed into a shell company registered in your name?" My stomach dropped through the floor. I opened the file. It was a forensic audit. It showed transfers authorized by my user ID, timestamped during hours I was usually in the office. The destination account was an offshore LLC I had never heard of. I looked up, shaking my head. I said, "Dad, I have no idea what this is. I didn't authorize these transfers." My mother spoke then, her voice dripping with disappointment. She said, "The digital footprint is yours, Emma. The login credentials are yours. The IP address matches your workstation. Don't lie to us." I looked at Liam. I said, "Liam, tell them. You know I wouldn't do this. You have admin access to my terminal. You used my computer last week when yours was updating." Liam turned around slowly. He put on the most heartbreaking performance of his life. He looked sad. He looked betrayed. He said, "Emma, I tried to protect you. I tried to fix the numbers before Mom and Dad saw, but the hole was too deep. I can't cover for your gambling problem anymore." I stood up, knocking my chair back. I screamed, "Gambling problem? I don't even buy lottery tickets. Liam, you are lying." My father slammed his hand on the table. He shouted, "Enough. We have the evidence, Emma. We have the bank records. Liam found the online casino accounts on your browser history." I realized then what had happened. Liam hadn't just framed me, he had constructed an entire alternate reality. He had planted cookies on my browser, likely used a VPN to access my accounts, and routed the money he probably stole to pay off his own debts. Liam was the one who spent weekends in Vegas, not me. But in my parents' eyes, their golden boy was incapable of sin. Therefore, the devil had to be me. The verdict was swift and brutal. My father stood up and adjusted his tie. He said, "We are going to liquidate your assets to pay back the Sterling Group. We will frame it as an accounting error to protect the family name, so you won't go to prison. But you are finished here. You are fired, and as far as this family is concerned, you are no longer a Ramos." I looked at my mother, pleading for a shred of maternal instinct. I said, "Mom, please, look at me. I am your daughter. I have worked myself to the bone for this company. Why would I steal?" She looked away, her face cold. She said, "You were always jealous of your brother's success. I just never thought you would stoop this low to sabotage him. Get out, Emma, and don't come to Christmas." I walked out of that building with nothing but my purse and a box of personal items. Security escorted me to the curb. As I stood there on the sidewalk, watching the traffic rush by, I saw Liam watching me from the third-floor window. He gave me a small, pitying wave. I didn't cry. That was the strange part. I should have been hysterical. I had just lost my job, my family, my reputation, and my inheritance in the span of 20 minutes. But as I watched Liam wave, the sadness evaporated. In its place, something else ignited. A cold, hard knot of rage settled in my chest. They wanted to paint me as the villain? Fine, I would become the villain of their story. But in my story, I was going to be the hero who burned their kingdom to the ground. The first 6 months were hell. I moved out of my nice condo and into a cramped studio apartment on the other side of the city. My savings were drained because my parents had access to my primary accounts I had foolishly made joint with them years ago for investment purposes, and they froze everything to repay the debt. I had to sell my car, I ate instant noodles, I took the bus. I couldn't get hired at any major firm. Word had spread. The accounting error rumor was whispered in every HR department in the city. Liam had done a good job poisoning the well. He told people I had a breakdown. He told people I was unstable. I fell into a depression. I spent days staring at the ceiling, replaying the betrayal. I thought about giving up. I thought about moving to a different state and changing my name. But then I saw a LinkedIn post. It was a photo of Liam shaking hands with Mr. Sterling. The caption read, "Ramos Consulting renews contract with Sterling Group for another 5 years. Proud of our CEO Liam Ramos for his visionary leadership." Visionary leadership. The man couldn't read a balance sheet without a cheat sheet. That post was the spark. I printed it out and taped it to my wall. I decided I wasn't going to look for a job anymore. I was going to make one. I registered a new LLC. I called it Apex Strategy. It was just me, a laptop, and a folding table in my studio apartment. I didn't have capital, but I had something Liam didn't. I had the actual skills that built Ramos Consulting. I knew the market. I knew the pain points of every major company in the sector. And most importantly, I knew where the bodies were buried at my old firm. I started small. I couldn't go after the big fish yet. I targeted the mid-sized companies that Ramos Consulting ignored or overcharged. My pitch was simple. I know you're paying for a brand name, but you're getting intern-level service. I offer partner-level strategy for half the cost, and I answer my own phone. It was a grind. I made 100 cold calls a day. I was hung up on, laughed at, and ignored. But finally, a logistics company in the suburbs gave me a shot. Their CEO, a no-nonsense woman named Karen, listened to me. She said, "I heard rumors about you, Emma. They say you cooked the books." I looked her in the eye and said, "If I cooked the books, I would be on a beach in Mexico, not begging for a consulting gig in a studio apartment. The only thing I cooked was the success of my previous firm, and they threw me out when they thought they could run it without me. Give me 1 month. If I don't save you 20% on your operational overhead, don't pay me a dime." She gave me the month. I saved her 30%. Karen told her friends told their partners. Slowly, Apex Strategy began to grow. I hired my first employee, a brilliant forensic accountant named David, who had been laid off by another firm. Then I hired a marketing specialist. Within a year, we moved out of my apartment and into a modest office space. We were growing, but we were still a gnat compared to Ramos Consulting. To take them down, I needed ammunition. I needed to prove that Liam wasn't just incompetent, but corrupt. I knew Liam. I knew he was lazy, and lazy people cut corners. I tasked David, my forensic accountant, with a special project. I said, I want you to look at the vendor relationships of Ramos Consulting's top clients. Don't hack anything illegal. Just look at public records, cross-reference the shell companies, look at the supply chains. It took David 3 months, but he found the threat. He walked into my office one evening, dropped a stack of papers on my desk, and smiled. He said, "Your brother isn't just a fraud, Emma. He's a thief on a massive scale. Here is what Liam was doing. He was setting up shell companies that posed as third-party consultants and vendors. Then he would tell his clients, like the Sterling Group, that they needed to hire these specific vendors for compliance audits or market-specialized research. The clients would pay the vendors huge fees. The vendors would produce generic, copy-pasted reports, and the money would circle back into accounts controlled by Liam. He was receiving kickbacks from his own fake vendors. He was bleeding his clients dry, charging them for services that were effectively worthless. But the smoking gun was even better. To authorize these payments quickly without going through the client's lengthy review boards, Liam had been forging signatures. He was cutting and pasting the digital signatures of CFOs onto invoices. It was highly illegal. It was prison time. I sat in my office, staring at the evidence. I had everything I needed to go to the FBI, but I didn't want to just send him to jail. That was too easy. I wanted him to lose everything first. I wanted my parents to watch their precious legacy crumble because of the son they chose over me. I decided to execute a hostile takeover of his client list. I started with the Sterling Group. They were the crown jewel. If they fell, Ramos Consulting would collapse. I called Mr. Sterling's secretary. She remembered me. She liked me. I told her I had urgent information regarding financial irregularities that could expose the Sterling Group to SEC violations. I didn't mention my company. I just mentioned compliance risk. Mr. Sterling agreed to see me for 10 minutes. I walked into the same building where I had been disowned. I took the elevator to the Sterling floor, not the Ramos floor. When I walked into Mr. Sterling's office, he looked skeptical. He said, "Emma, it's been a while. Your father told me about your troubles. I hope you're seeking help." I sat down and opened my laptop. I said, "Mr. Sterling, with all due respect, my father is a liar and my brother is a criminal. But I'm not here to talk about family drama. I'm here to save you from a federal indictment." I turned the laptop around. I showed him the flow of money. I showed him the shell companies. I showed him the invoices with his own signature on them, signatures he had never signed. He went pale. He put on his glasses and leaned in. He scrolled through the documents. His hands started to shake. He said, This invoice is for $300,000 for a sustainability audit. We never ordered a sustainability audit." I said, "I know, but you paid for it, and the money went to an LLC registered in the Cayman Islands that lists Liam's college roommate as the registered agent." Mr. Sterling stood up. His face was a mask of fury. He picked up his phone. He said, "Get legal in here now, and get security to block all access from Ramos Consulting immediately." He looked at me. He said, "Can you prove this in court?" I handed him a USB drive. I said, "It's all there. Every transaction, every forged signature." He looked at me with a newfound respect. He asked, "Why did you bring this to me first? Why not the police?" I stood up and smoothed my skirt. I said, "Because I want the contract. I built the strategy that made you profitable in the last 3 years, Mr. Sterling. Liam just took the credit. I want my work back." He extended his hand. He said, "You're hired. Apex strategy takes over, effective immediately." The dominoes fell fast after that. When the Sterling Group fired Ramos Consulting for breach of contract and fraud, the news hit the industry like a nuclear bomb. I didn't stop there. I visited every single one of Liam's major clients. I presented the same evidence. I showed them how they were being fleeced. One by one, they canceled their contracts with Ramos and signed with Apex. Within 6 weeks, Ramos Consulting had lost 90% of its revenue, but their expenses remained high. They had expensive leases, high salaries, and massive debt servicing. Without the cash flow from Sterling and the others, the company went into a tailspin. I heard through the grapevine that Liam was frantic. He was firing staff, he was taking out predatory loans to keep the lights on. My parents were pouring their personal retirement savings into the firm to save it, convinced it was just a rough patch. They didn't realize the ship wasn't just leaking, the bottom had fallen out. Then came the bankruptcy filings. Ramos Consulting was insolvent. The creditors were circling, the lawsuits from the defrauded clients were piling up. I was sitting in my corner office overlooking the city when my receptionist buzzed me. She said, "Miss Ramos, there are 2 people here to see you, a Mr. and Mrs. Ramos. They say they are your parents." I spun my chair around. I looked at the view. I had waited 2 years for this moment. I said, "Send them in." They walked in. They looked 10 years older. My father's suit was wrinkled. My mother looked tired, her eyes red from crying. They stood awkwardly by the door, taking in the luxury of my office, the modern art, the glass walls, the bustling activity of 50 employees outside. I didn't stand up. I didn't offer them a seat. I just looked at them. My mother spoke first. She said, "Emma, this place, it's beautiful." I said, "It is. It's what happens when you have a CEO who actually works. What do you want?" My father cleared his throat. He tried to muster some of his old authority, but it fell flat. He said, "We know you're behind this, Emma. You stole our clients. You ruined your brother." I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. I said, "I didn't steal anything. I won them. The free market decided that my competence was worth more than Liam's fraud. And I didn't ruin him. He ruined himself when he decided to forge signatures and steal from the people paying his bills. I just turned the lights on so everyone could see." My mother stepped forward, tears welling up. She said, "Emma, please, the lawsuits, they're going to take everything. The house, the cars, your father's pension. We're going to be destitute. Liam is facing criminal charges." I leaned back in my chair. I asked, "And?" She looked shocked. She said, "And? We are your family. You have to help us. You have millions now. You can bail out the firm. You can talk to the Sterling Group. Get them to drop the lawsuit." I stared at her. The audacity was breathtaking. I said, "Let me get this straight. You threw me out on the street. You accused me of a crime I didn't commit. You let your son frame me. You didn't call me for 2 years. You didn't check if I was eating. You didn't check if I had a roof over my head. And now, because the golden boy set fire to your house, you want the scapegoat to bring a bucket of water?" My father said, "It was a mistake. We were misled. Liam told us." I slammed my hand on the desk, echoing the gesture he had made to me 2 years ago. I said, "You were the parents. It was your job to know. You knew who I was. You knew my character. But you chose to believe the lie because it was easier than facing the fact that your favorite child was a failure." I opened a drawer and pulled out a document. I slid it across the desk. I said, "Do you know what this is?" My father picked it up. His hands shook. I said, "That is the deed to the building Ramos Consulting leases its office space from. The landlord was selling, and I bought it last week through a holding company." They stared at me in horror. I continued, "And since the tenant, Ramos Consulting, is 3 months behind on rent, I am exercising my right to evict. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises. Security will be there on Monday to change the locks." My mother sobbed. She said, "Emma, you can't do this. This is vengeance." I stood up and walked to the window. I said, "No, Mom, this isn't vengeance. Vengeance would be planting evidence to frame you for a crime you didn't commit. Vengeance would be ruining your reputation with lies. This is just business." I turned back to them. I said, Liam wanted to play CEO? Well, this is the most important lesson in business. If you act like a predator, eventually you meet a bigger beast. Get out of my office. They tried to argue, but I pressed the button for security. 2 large guards appeared and escorted my weeping mother and shouting father out of the building. I watched them leave from my window. I saw them get into their aging car and drive away into the traffic. The aftermath was total. Ramos Consulting was liquidated. Liam was indicted on multiple counts of wire fraud and forgery. He took a plea deal to avoid a 10-year sentence, but he'll still spend the next 3 years in federal prison. My parents lost their house. They had to move into a small rental. They live off Social Security now. They try to call me sometimes from unknown numbers. I changed mine a long time ago. Apex Strategy is now the leading consultancy firm in the tri-state area. I employ over 100 people. I run my business with transparency and integrity. Sometimes people ask me what my secret to success is. They expect me to say hard work or innovation, but I always tell them the truth. I tell them, my secret is that I learned early on that nobody is coming to save you. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones holding the knife. So you have to build your own armor. You have to build your own throne. And if anyone tries to take it from you, you don't just fight back. You make sure they never have the resources to fight anyone ever again. Justice isn't given. It's engineered. And business is booming. If you stayed until the end, there are more stories like this waiting for you. Like the video, subscribe, and join me for more unforgettable revenge and justice stories.